study, a survey. Du Bois was a sociologist. And so he did a survey. He was known for doing surveys and deep research to find out what are the conditions that people were dealing with and living with. And he did a survey of black cooperatives. And in 1907, he counted 154 black co-ops in the United States across all sectors, but mostly in consumer cooperatives and some in producer cooperatives. So we're going to get to what those are. But he said at one point, we unwittingly stand at the crossroads. Should we go the way of capitalism and try to become individually rich as capitalists? Or should we go the way of cooperatives and economic cooperation, where we and our whole community could be rich together? And this was not something that I had ever, seen or heard about attributed to Du Bois. And, thankful, of course, to Jessica Gordon-Nemhart for unearthing this history of, growing up as a kid. What I learned about Du Bois was there was a guy named W. Du Bois and there was a guy named Booker T. Washington. And there was a debate between Booker T. and W.E.B. And, you're a kid, everything rhymes, so it's Booker T. and W.E.B. And so what's the debate? Okay, Booker T. Washington was all about black capitalism. He was like, let's get rich, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. White people love them. And W.E.B. Du Bois was just like, this doesn't work. So he was just complaining. So, but there was a lot more there. There was a deep analysis of the economy and economic systems. And I want to spend a moment here before jumping into the different kinds of cooperatives. So what I'm going to do in the time that we've got is spend a bit of just framing, situating broken. There is an accountability that's broken between, cause and effect. So you have people who own a business who, they make decisions about products, they make decisions about how things get made, but they won't feel the effects of that process. I use as an example here, actually I'll pause on it. I won't, go into examples. I'll save that for a little further. But, what I wanted to really just highlight at this stage is that when we talk about what is the economic system that we're creating, we got to understand what is the economic system that we're seeing this in opposition to, what it's an alternative to. And in our current economic system, we have businesses that are owned and controlled by people that aren't feeling the effects of their business. But the fact that they put money in gives them the right to get any profits, any surplus that's generated, and the right to make decisions. And so when we talk about what are the rights in a cooperative, the right of ownership, wherever you are, the right of ownership in a cooperative or in a capitalist enterprise, it's the same right. You have the right to whatever surplus is generated by that business, and you have the right to make decisions about that business. So comparing the two, capitalist business or cooperative enterprise, the difference is really who are the people that are the owners? Who are the people that are the owners? Are they disinterested people whose one motivation is to maximize the profit that's being generated? Or are they people who have some other role? You with me so far? All right. Anybody not with me so far? Okay. All right. If you're not with me, because you disagree, or actually just something just made no sense, then stop me. Raise your hand. Say something. All right. So we thank Du Bois for highlighting this, that capitalism is not the be-all and end-all, and that there are other ways of structuring an economy, and that as Black people, this is something that we should be paying attention to. So I'm going to skip over this and just jump to different kinds of. Okay, I'll mention this slide here. It's like, take a look, go look. So this, those of us, you may have heard, actually I'll ask, has anybody here ever heard of the phrase solidarity economy? Yes. All right. So let's get some thoughts here. Mike. Okay. Yes, because there's a recording, so I'll stand over here. Thank you. It saves my voice too. All right. So I just asked, has anybody heard of a solidarity economy? What is that? And several of you raised your hand. So let's hear from a few people. I'm gonna get two people. What do you know of as a solidarity economy? What is that? There were a bunch of hands that went up, so let's see. Yes. And you say your name?
Maya. My name is Maya White. Still learning about it, but from what I think of it, it's like the antithesis of capitalism. It's thinking of people at the center, and how we can build financially, holistically, the wealth and the health of people in our communities.
Great, and that's a core piece. People are at the center. People are at the center in a solidarity economy. Somebody else?
Frequently, it's associated with a socialist economy, where you're working for the people rather than for yourselves as individuals.
Well, that core idea is that people are at the center. So yes, you're putting people at the center of that. So yes, and both of those are solid on that. This is when we look at the dynamic that happens within a capitalist economy. When your main motivation is to get as much money as you can out of the business, and you don't have any other interest in it. You may, have over time now, there's some sectors where I want to be in business for good and I want to do good, and you got the Ben and Jerry's of the world that come about, even though they, will wind up selling to a multinational. But, what you're seeing generally is that you have businesses that are owned by someone whose primary motivation is to get some profit out of the business.
and to be able to sustain themselves and live the life that they want to live. Now, when that's the relationship, and that's the primary relationship, then all the other interests and needs can, go by the wayside, and they can be dropped off, if they don't meet the profit motive. And that's not to say that the surplus isn't important, but there are other needs at play. And so the idea of a solidarity economy is that you're putting people at the center of the economy instead of profit. And so the economy as a whole, the economy as a whole is about meeting the needs of people. And some of that may happen in the market, where you have businesses that are exchanging goods and services, like in most of the co-ops that you're familiar with. But some of that may be outside of the market. When you're talking about mutual aid projects, when you're talking about gift exchanges, getting people's needs met, doing that care work that is generally not paid for, and typically falls on women, as unpaid care work. That is part of the economy, but in capitalism, it's not counted. So when I wake up and, I'm getting my kids ready, doing the dishes, cleaning house, taking the kids to school, I've spent, hours in the morning and in the night, in my day. That's not leisure. That's work. But it's not counted in a capitalist economy, but it is work. So that's real. It's not counted in a capitalist economy, but it is part of a solidarity economy because it's work that's actually happening. So, this is just something to keep in mind when we juxtapose the two, and we see what's in a capitalist economy and what's left out. And what's left out is often us. It's people doing the work. So I'm going to jump to, well, I did say I'd talk about this here. What you see here are different aspects of what make an economy. So there are questions about how surplus is distributed. When there's a business is making money, or there's extra resources, how is that distributed? It's distributed through credit unions. It's distributed through, loan funds. These are things that are centering people. When you look at where resources are, that's about creation. What is the value of land? Who has access to land and to resources? Is this something that's owned by an individual, or is this something that's collectively owned? If you have an economy that centers people, then it's about how we share resources amongst each other. So things like community land trusts, cooperative land banks, those are things that fall into that. When we talk about how we exchange resources, then all of these are things that are about creating spaces where people can show up and get their needs met. Yeah.
So, quick question, just for clarification, because I've never heard of the solidarity economy before until now. This is more of a holistic
Yep.
approach, as opposed to capitalism is strictly financial or economic, right? And this is more of a holistic framework where you're bringing your whole self to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're thinking of, what is our whole self? It's us. It's each and every one of us. So this is about centering people within the economy. Yeah.
I wanted to add a clarification. Capitalism is also holistic. What happens is that all of this is varied, and therefore we don't, unless we understand how that is varied, we cannot remove the structures that oppress us. So capitalism is also holistic. So you would look at this wheel or this economy, if you're looking at it from a capitalistic eye, what is it doing with each one of these things? Like with land, how does it do land different from this economy?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I would also add, like, the value system with capitalism, you would
Right.
DIY projects, things like that. There's less value associated with it.
Right. And that's a major outcome, because when what is at the core of your economy is profit, when what's at the core is profit, then everything becomes a commodity. Everything becomes a way to get profit. And so all of our transactions All of our interactions become these transactions that are just about, even just, things that don't have anything to do with money. I walk into a room, you walk into a conference here, and, if we are, not if, we are used to operating in an economy, in a space where, we're always on the lookout on how can I get the most? How can I maximize my profit? And that bleeds into the culture. So you walk into a conference, and for many people, the thoughts are, who can I, talk to? Who do I need to talk to get what I need to get for my project, for my business, for my career goal, for my personal transformation in life? Whatever it is, it's who can I get to get me what I need? Not, how can I support somebody who's clearly in need because they just broke down crying, or I heard them 5 minutes ago talking about the stress that they're dealing with. That stuff goes out the window. My main concern is I got job prospects. I got to get a grant proposal, whatever it is. And that is where the relationships get broken. So the outcome of a capitalist economy that is about commodifying and centering profit is that human relationships get broken.
Also, it becomes transactional.
Yep. Shelley.
I wanted to say, I actually think that Kevin is very different. Like, I don't think it's holistic. I studied economics a couple decades ago, but I remember, like, the first classes, the first thing they teach you about is the survival of the fittest, Charles Darwin theory, as the basic, seed for the development of capitalism, and the idea is competition and, the best survive. So I think of it very differently, because I think, like, being smart with words is useful. That's what I learned from the far right. So, like, I won't say things like social whatever, but I'll say cooperation capitalism instead of competition capitalism. So we don't just want the fittest to survive. We want all of the population to survive. There's value in all of them in a way. So I think of them being very different.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Survive, but how about thrive?
Yes.
Thrive is the mentality of limit and lack, right? We're just trying to make it thrive.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the
So that's
budget.
what draws me to this, is that we can thrive.
And
We approach with abundance, a theory of abundance instead of scarcity.
right.
There's enough here for all of us.
Yeah, I also, among other things, I also teach economics for public policy at City College, the City University of New York, and so this is my first semester teaching in an academic setting. I've been, doing adult co-op education, co-op development, adults and young people, and so in this setting, and I've been doing economics, but from the grassroots, doing co-op development work. And so there's definitely a set of assumptions that are a part of economics and economics education that really rest on this whole idea of this survival of the fittest. Things are about competition, and it's about scarcity of resources. When you talk about an economy that centers people, then you're flipping that. And it's no longer, you can't have an economy, you can't recognize the interconnections that exist between us and how we share resources, and still hold this idea that it's all or nothing, that it's a zero-sum game. There are things that happen when people come together to meet each other's needs. I see your hand over there. I'll say one thing. I'm going to share a quick story. So for many years, there was a festival that I and others helped organize in the South Bronx called the Big Bronx Sancochazo. And this was our take on the story of Stone Soup. And this was with an organization that I'd founded called Green Worker Cooperatives. And so, what we did was we put on this festival. We take the exchange transfer part of this solidarity economy, where we wanted to build this really build out a culture of what do we do when disaster strikes? How do we support each other? What does it actually look like? And what would it look like if we didn't wait for a disaster to strike? What would it look like at a festival? And so we'd organized this festival that was a take on the stone soup story. I don't know if folks are familiar with that. But what it looked like was that we invited people to come to a community garden in the South Bronx and told them, we're going to make this big, giant vat of sancocho. Sancocho, very much in the African tradition, in the Caribbean and in Latin America. It's basically a big, giant stew with plantains and cassava, batata, and other vegetables and meats. And you make this big thing, and it's a collective process. And so invited people to come out, and I was very, clear about we're not buying anything. We're not buying anything for the soup. We're gonna have the pot. We got the space. We're inviting people to come, and we're gonna create the space for folks to show up and contribute, because we all have something to contribute. And there were folks who were like, that morning, Omar, we need some carrots, we need some rice, we need some salt. What's going on? We got to get this stuff. It's like, it's 11 o'clock. We're supposed to be starting at 12. And I'd say, no, we're not buying anything. We're trusting that we are going to have soup for 200 people. And, we're going to get that fire going. So we got the fire going, boil the water, and we invite people to bring for everybody. And so I got, some foam core, put some chalkboard paint on it, and just wrote with chalk, we need carrots, we need plantains, we need, whatever was still missing. And people brought it. People would come in, they'd love what was going on, wanted to contribute, and some people would come in and say, oh, okay, what do you need? All right, I see it over there. I'm gonna go around to the bodega, go down the block, come back. People would come with a bag of rice, some garlic, whatever was needed. Onions, corn, everything. And we were able to feed 200 people, and that went for about 5 years, at this community garden, in this festival. And this was just straight grassroots from the bottom, but it's coming from that space of abundance, that there's something there that all of us can contribute something. And that we're contributing because we have an interest, we have a need that we want to get met. We want to have a good time. And in order for me to have a good time, I'm coming into the space, I can see the potential that's here, then I'm going to contribute to that space. And so that is really what is at the core of cooperatives, that people are coming together to meet their needs, and they see the potential, and there's a contribution that they can make, and they're going to make it. So with that, now I can jump to the next slide. So I'm going to go through different kinds of cooperatives. Actually, before I do that, let me ask, raise your hand if you are a member of a cooperative. Excellent. All right, so it's just about half, a little less than half of the room. Great, so I'm going to go through different kinds of cooperatives. For the others, raise your hand if you support cooperatives in any capacity. All right, great. So in that case, I may not need to do these slides. We'll see. I may just move through them pretty quickly, which is good because we only got about 18 minutes. All right, so first one, consumer cooperatives. Consumer cooperatives, these are businesses that are owned and controlled by their consumers. So what makes these consumer co-ops? Yes, beyond that they're owned and controlled by the consumers, these are businesses, and like all cooperatives, these are businesses that exist to meet the needs of their members, whoever the members are. And in the case of a consumer co-op, the members are the consumers, the shoppers, the people who are using the services. And what do you want as a consumer? You walk into any store, what are you looking for? Where did that come from? Oh, look, it's up there. High quality, low prices. You know, and that could be at any range of the spectrum. You could be walking into a discount 99-cent store. You still want, you know, a good quality candle or a lighter. You don't want something that as soon as 5 minutes you walk out of the store, it's going to break down. The same thing if you want a luxury good. You could be buying a Rolls Royce. If anybody, I don't know anybody here is buying a Rolls Royce. That's a different conference. But, you know, if you were, you still expect a high quality good, but you still want those lower prices you can get. You're not going to pay more just because you want to pay more. So, you know, that's the interest. The interest of the consumer is a high quality good at a low price. And, you know, these are some examples of consumer co-ops. Some of these, you know, some of you may know. So Detroit People's Food Co-op is in the works. So this is going to be part of the Detroit Food Hub. And so you've got folks like Malik Yakini, who's been you know, part of a team that's leading that effort. They've been doing phenomenal work. You can see that number over there as of yesterday. They have 1,457 members, and they haven't opened the doors yet. So they've been doing aggressive organizing to really build a base of members. And their members, remember this is a consumer co-op, so their members are shoppers, the people who would shop in the space. The East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative is another kind of a consumer co-op. So this is in the realm of real estate. So you think of land trusts, a real estate cooperative is in that same vein. Yes. This is in Oakland, yes. So they've been working and building out a structure so that they are going to they're collectively owning parcels of land and taking it out of the speculative market. And so their interest as consumers, as residents, is to create affordable housing in perpetuity for good. And the way to do that is to take land and put it in a space where it's not going to be flipped every so often and sold at whatever the highest value is in the sector. And that's a strategy that's good for, it's used for preserving affordable housing. It's used for preserving, just affordable real estate, whether you're a resident looking for housing or you're a business looking for, retail space or manufacturing space. If you want a manufacturing business and you want a manufacturing space, you're really hard pressed to find a space because the market is pushing towards high luxury properties. So as long as the market is pushing towards that, it's extremely difficult to find affordable space for anything. Next one here is the Brooklyn Cooperative Federal Credit Union. So long-standing institution in central Brooklyn, still primarily, long-time black community. There's gentrification that's happening. So, that is something that is transforming communities throughout New York City and other parts of the country. But Brooklyn Cooperative Federal Credit Union has been an institution that has been able to act as a bank in the sense of what we think of our banking services, but it's owned and controlled by the depositors. So you put money into a bank, you generally don't have any say, but at a credit union, you do have a say. I'll add, another kind of co-op, but that's not thought of as a co-op, but should be, are rotating savings and credit associations. So we know them as SUSUs, tandas, or sociedad in different parts of Latin America, and they go by many different names, but there's a sister named Caroline Hossein, who is a Caribbean-Canadian black woman who has been really pushing incredibly hard to recognize and shine the light on these rotating savings and credit associations as co-ops, as cooperative institutions. That it's not just about, what is recognized in Europe or in white co-op circles as co-ops, but these are institutions that are distinctly African, come from a long tradition of people pooling resources. And for those who don't know what these are lending pools. Think of them that way. You get 10 people together, and they're generally women who are coming together, and if there's 10 of us in a circle, and each of us every month is putting in $100 or $50 or $1,000, and we're pooling our money together, and each month that pot goes to one member of the circle. And so it acts as think of it as lending and savings, because everyone is contributing, it's a savings plan for everyone, and each person gets a turn. And so it's not something that's, it's not an interest, you're not making money off of the interest. It's something where the users, the members, are coming together, pooling their money in order to be able to get their needs met. So, add that to the list of different kinds of co-ops. Next kind of co-ops, so there's consumer cooperatives. There's this other kind that goes by many names. I lump them all together. Some folks like to distinguish them, but I think there's what's at the core of what makes a co-op is who are the members and what's the relationship. And in this case, you've got things that are known as shared services cooperative, producer cooperatives, purchasing cooperatives, marketing cooperatives. There's one basic idea, that you've got individual businesses that are coming together, and they've got, it could be an individual that owns a business and they've got their own staff, their own employees, but they decide that there's some need that they have, that they want to come together to reduce their costs, to reduce the cost of doing business. So they pool together with other businesses that are in the same boat. And what it looks like, Ujamaa Cooperative. You have, and it has been mentioned, Lakeisha's here, and there are other members of Ujamaa that are here. Ujamaa Cooperative are primarily black women. Anybody here from Ujamaa? All right, so you talk about Ujamaa. I'm going to put you on the spot. Thank you. And I apologize if I put you on the spot harshly. I do want to put you on the spot, but maybe in a kinder way. So, people should be speaking for themselves. So, Ujamaa is a great example of a cooperative that is creating a marketing. It's a shared marketing and creating a space for its members to be able to get out there and their needs that are being met. Federation of Southern Cooperatives is really a co-op of co-ops. So black farmer cooperatives, primarily throughout the South, but over the past few years, they've been actually making a lot of connections with black farmers in the North. They've also been doing work internationally, providing support to co-ops on the African continent. And so, they're a great example, long-standing institution, 55-year anniversary this year. They've been doing that work for an incredibly long time, and have really been about providing the resources and support, both advocacy and technical support to their member farmer cooperatives. So they're a co-op of co-ops, really. Last one, worker cooperatives. So we talked about, I've mentioned the consumer co-ops that are consumers that are coming together, these shared services, marketing cooperatives, et cetera, that are individual businesses coming together. The last form of cooperatives are cooperatives of the people who are actually working in the business itself. So these are worker cooperatives. So these are the workers, who would be the employees in a capitalist business, people who in any other circumstance would be getting a paycheck and just wages and not getting any other surplus, access to the surplus, or making decisions. They form a cooperative, a worker cooperative, because you want the surplus. You want that you want the pie. You want the whole pie, not, a few wages, but you want where most of the money is, and that's in that surplus, in the profit that's being generated in the business. So it's to get that surplus, to get higher income for themselves and their families, and it's also to be able to have a say in decision making. Because remember, I said that there are two rights of ownership that are recognized. It's the right to the surplus, the profits that are generated by the business, and it's the right to make decisions about the business. So in a worker co-op, that's what you have access to. So some examples of that. The one on the far left is Solar Uptown Now Services. These are solar panel installers in New York City, and I had the great pleasure of working with them to launch. They are doing incredible work. They're about 15 solar installers, all black, and they've been doing this work now for about, well, pre-pandemic, so it's maybe like 3 or 4 years. Since the pandemic, everything is kind of a blur. Yeah. They're in New York City. They were actually, they came out of a training program for solar installers that's run by West Harlem Environmental Action. And so, what happened with them is that, WEACT, as they're known, West Harlem Environmental Action, they started this workforce training program because they saw, they felt that they were seeing the need for renewable energy. West Harlem and Harlem, and black communities and communities of color, throughout New York City, like the rest of the country, are the communities that get all of what nobody else wants. So the dirty infrastructure, the polluting power plants, the truck depot, the truck distribution centers, all of that are housed in the poorest neighborhoods, the blackest neighborhoods. And so the folks at WEACT said, we want to be part of a change. We want to create something different. We know that there's this green economy. There's green jobs. We want our community to get a piece of that. So we're going to run a training program. But the solar panel industry and the renewable energy industry as a whole is even wider than the fossil fuel industry. So if you look at companies that are building windmills, that are installing solar panels, even that are doing weatherization work, they're primarily white, and they're whiter than you would see, at Mobile. And so, the folks would go through this training program, and they'd try to get jobs, and they'd hit these walls. They were hitting these walls left, right, and center. So they said, well, what if we actually created our own business? So they did that, and they formed Solar Uptown Now Services, and were able to move forward in doing that work. And so now they're doing, they deserve a clap for that. They're doing small and large installations, and so I want to see them grow. Everybody wants to see them grow and really get a lot more business. Getting more business are these next two. So the one in the middle, this is Cooperative Home Care Associates, and I think most folks have heard of Cooperative Home Care Associates. I've been used to saying for the longest time they're the largest worker cooperative in the United States. That just recently changed. So Cooperative Home Care Associates has over 2,000 workers. Most of them are worker owners. There's a probation period. So in a worker cooperative, and so there's a lag between when someone joins and when they gets hired and when they actually become a member. So they have over 2,000 worker owners, more, about 2,500 now. And so they are primarily black women, Caribbean, African American, Latina, and so they are, given that, and this is an important point, particularly in light of the next co-op that I'm going to mention. As worker cooperatives, at 2,000 plus worker owners, they are the largest worker cooperative. They were the largest worker cooperative in the United States. And with most other worker co-ops averaging around 20 people, larger ones, averaging maybe about 100, 150, then we know that most members of worker cooperatives are black women. And that's important. Are people of color. And particularly just based on Cooperative Home Care Associates. Now, it's not just them. There are actually lots of other co-ops. But it's important to note that when people think about co-ops as white institutions or white spaces, and they have in their mind, somebody who's white eating granola at a food co-op, that is not actually representative of who co-op members actually are. Especially when we look at the next co-op. So the next co-op is brand new. They are just a year and a half old. They're also in New York City. I didn't mention Cooperative Home Care Associates is in the Bronx, BX. The Drivers Cooperative is also based in New York City. They launched as the co-op alternative to Lyft and Uber. So they have a ride-share platform called Co-op Ride. You can actually download the app on any app library, any app store, and you can have access to it. But they're just based in New York, so it won't work here in Baltimore. So there Co-op Ride? Yes. Mhm. Great, great. So there are a number of worker cooperative taxi services, and so they've grown, particularly over the years. In the case of the Drivers Cooperative, they've launched and they have this as a platform, and so they set up a rideshare application. Now, they've learned just in the past year and a half that it's really hard for them to go up against Uber and Lyft.
I want to know what is their, what is it that would make someone go with them? What's the conscious rider part? That's, I guess, what I wanted to know.
Yeah, so there are a few. I could actually go off on a tangent just focused on that. For any of these, there are benefits and there are challenges. In their case, with most businesses, particularly, most widely successful with Cooperative Home Care Associates, there's the benefit that because this is something that's owned and controlled by its workers, by its members, the people who are the customers see them as providing higher quality. So your consumer interest to get high quality, at a low price, even if you're not part of the co-op, for the consumer, they see, I want my mother, I'm at a point now where I'm having the conversations about my mother, getting home health care service. I want whoever's taking care of my mother and being with her when I'm not there and reminding her to take her medicine every single day, because I call her every day and I show up every other day and sometimes every day, but she still doesn't take it. So, having somebody that's actually caring and taking care of her, is critical. And I don't want somebody who's just seeing this as looking at the clock and, seeing this as a cash cow. So you want somebody that cares. So that's been something that's been a clear benefit for Cooperative Home Care Associates. And it's been talked about to the point that they are seen as the leaders in training, training other businesses in how to do not cooperative development, but how to do home healthcare training. With Co-op Ride, that potential is also there. But for them, what they've realized is that there's a big challenge for them to go up against Uber and Lyft. There's an infrastructure and just a marketing machine that they don't have. They're actually pivoting, and they're focusing more on the Access-A-Ride. In New York City, there's this Access-A-Ride program, basically where paratransit is the name for it. So providing pickup services for people with disabilities, going to doctor's appointments. There are more fixed contracts and it's more lucrative. So, just as a takeaway, with any of these are businesses, and you've got to figure out how to make them work. Even when we're centering people, and putting people at the center, there's still exchanges that are happening. They still have to figure out how do we meet our customers' needs. And that's a learning process. And you've got to build that into your co-op to always be reflecting, how can we pivot? What are we learning in this process? Most businesses fail within the first 5 years. And if you don't have the money to burn, then you're going to be out of business. And, for all of us, we're coming from and working in communities where we don't have the money to burn, so we got to learn quickly. So to the extent that you build that in and create a way to learn quickly, then you'll have a more successful co-op. So, I just did a quick run through, on different kinds of co-ops. Yeah.
So who is now the largest co-op?
So thank you for that, because I introduced it. So it was Cooperative Home Care Associates. Now it's actually the Drivers Cooperative. So the Drivers Cooperative, as of just a few months ago, was 3,500 members.
That's interesting, because there's this new show on, I think it's like Showtime or one of them, but it's about the establishment of Uber. and showed how they were competing with each other for the whole thing and stuff. But the big thing was having drivers and instilling it. So I thought that that was going to be the challenge. But when you say they got 3,500,
They got 3,500 drivers. They went hard, and you know, it's they work for themselves, and they figured out a way to make it happen. For the drivers, it was a real no-brainer, particularly because Uber has been taking a lot more out of the drivers. You know, the money that goes to the drivers.
So many random people, just anybody driving Uber and Lyft. So people are worried about being harmed and stuff stolen and.
Yeah.
yeah,
On the other side, right, the conscious rider part, right, Uber and Lyft, I worked for them for a hot second and realized how much they're taking advantage of the drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying, so that, I think, is a conscious rider, is that, you know, as a cooperative of owners who are doing this, right, they're taking care of each other and not taking advantage of each other.
Yep, for sure. The benefit is definitely there for folks who are looking for, you want to contribute to some, you don't want to be exploiting the person that you just hired, you know, you're paying to take you somewhere. You want to be able to be a contribution also. Yeah. Actually, the sister behind you.
I was gonna add, I know a lot of taxi drivers in New York have been on strike too, so I'm wondering how there have been strikes over the past few years, so I'm wondering how that has also impacted the number of folks that are now turning to say, I'm not gonna do traditional taxi driving.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be a part of this.
Yeah, you know, in every sector, you know, when you have folks that get dissatisfied, that's when the organizing happens. And, you know, the approach has historically been forming the unions, and, you know, and that's been critical. You know, without unions, the capitalists would be running amok, and they have been. You know, that's why we see these bigger widening gaps between rich and poor. The co-ops, you know, the co-op organizing, particularly in the labor sector, it's the worker co-op organizing, is also a key part of that. Because, you know, after you've exercised this option of forming a union and that doesn't happen, then the next question becomes, well, why don't we just start our own business? And we see that happen, you know, in all kinds of industries. Right. Thank you. We are now at lunchtime. Thanks for taking the time.
We got it all in.
we covered a lot. I hope you got something out of it. Great, and you know, I encourage you to mix and mingle with lots of folks and share your own stories, what's happening within your co-ops, in your co-op development groups. You know, ask others lots of questions, and you know, let's keep building this. Yeah. Thanks. Thing. I don't know if I can even get this up. I forgot to put my contact info.
I saw it at the beginning, so I took your,
Folks, if anybody, I forgot to put up my last slide. Oh, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, my contact info is here on this slide.
So you used to work for Cooperative Extension?
No.
Okay.
Green Worker Cooperative.
Oh, green workers, okay.
So and now
interesting now
Yeah.
that folks are approaching my age. Take care.
Work together. When you were up there,
Hey, how are you? Yes, I'm good. Yeah. Well, connected like we talked, we met. But we haven't worked together on anything. There was one point when we were